Brothers and sisters, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a friend to CWA. So let's give a warm CWA welcome to our friend, Lieutenant Governor of the state of New Jersey, Shelia Oliver.
Please have a seat, make yourself comfortable. You certainly deserve to have this evening of recognition and camaraderie amongst each other. First of all, I'd like to thank Reverend Wade for that wonderful introduction of Dr. Sturdivant, and I have an affinity in my heart for the city of Philadelphia. So I'm glad both of you referenced Philadelphia. Reverend Wade, for a period of time, some years ago, pastored a church from down the street from where I live, St. Mark AME. Current pastor is Reverend Kenneth Mitchum. He lives down here in the south part of the state. But you were at St. Mark, and St. Mark is still there, and it's still thriving. And one of my dearest friends, her car is outside the St. Mark every single day. She is Catherine Willis. She's Reverend Rick's mom. But pleasure to do that. And to Carolyn Wade, your fearless leader. Yeah, let's give, you can call her the fearless leader. To all of the officers and the committee members of CWA Local 1040, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you tonight. I met your president when I first arrived in Trenton in 2004. And actually I came in 2003 because after we have an election, we come to Trenton and we do what's called caucus. So I don't think I have to tell anybody in this room that I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. So I came to Trenton to the caucus, and that's when we elect our leadership, and gave me an opportunity to meet the people I would be serving with. But one of the first persons I met when I began my tenure in the State Assembly was Carolyn Wade. And in those early days, one of the things that I became very interested in were the conditions at Ancora Psychiatric Hospital. And I was serving on the Human Services Committee. I eventually chaired that committee. And we were fighting very hard for the state to address the issues that existed at Ancora. And Carolyn was at the forefront of supporting her members who were working there under some very tenuous conditions. So I applaud all of you that belong to Local 1040 because I am familiar with the work you do. I am familiar with the state agencies in which you do your work. I know that you do work that is what I describe as a labor of love. That is what you do. So let's applaud each other for what we do. And through the years, I also developed a great relationship with your state director, Hetty. And every year I would host a luncheon, and it's called the Shirley Chisholm Awards. And I recognize women from different spheres of life who reflect the tenacity and the boldness of the late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, who is a woman of color who had a great deal of influence on me as I was a young girl growing up in the city of Newark. I am the child of the civil rights movement. I am a baby boomer. And as I was growing up, all the influences around me were raising the questions about our society and how things needed to change. I grew up in a family that was very active in organized labor. I'll start with my grandmother, who came to Jersey City, New Jersey, from South Carolina in 1929. When she and my grandfather, my mother and my late aunt arrived in Jersey City, in the beginning, my grandmother was just at home caring for her children, the two children she and my grandfather had. My grandfather worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and it was his working at the Pennsylvania Railroad that I learned the history of the sleeping car porters and A. Philip Randolph. My grandmother, after the two daughters grew up and kind of could take care of themselves, my grandmother worked at a hospital in Jersey City. Years ago, it was called the Margaret Haig Hospital. And she became a shop steward there. And she was a woman who spoke up for people who worked in that hospital who couldn't speak for themselves. My father and his brothers got involved in the Brooklyn Naval Yard because they were not hiring people of color. And they were out there on that picket line many days in Brooklyn. And it was people from all diverse backgrounds who believed in the issue of economic opportunity and equality. So growing up in that type of an environment, I began to understand that justice, equal opportunity, the opportunity for people to get an education, and an opportunity for who I call disenfranchised people. And as a woman of color, I have focused through the years on the disenfranchisement of women, the disenfranchisement of what we describe and define as, quote, minority groups. And as an 8th grader, I read a book by Charles Dickens called A Tale of Two Cities. And it's a story of the French Revolution, when people got tired of being hungry, they got tired of the tyranny from the king and the queen, they got tired of being thrown in the jail, which was called the Bastille, and they decided to storm the Bastille, let the people out who had been jailed, inappropriately, and they began to demand that there was bread for people to eat. And you will remember, if you remember the story of A Tale of Two Cities, that Marie Antoinette was the queen, and she gazed out the window at the people protesting about their living conditions. And in the comfort of her palace, she said, well, if the people have no bread, then let them eat cake. Well, baby, a revolutionary was born at age 13. We are living in a time that is very, very, very difficult. And I like to describe that there is a foul mood that is permeating this country. And it is a foul mood. It is a country that is turning its back on disenfranchised people, turning its back on the working poor, fighting with tenacity the ability for people to earn a living wage and trying to thwart the opportunity for working class people to rise up and become a part of this country's middle class. If it were not for a union like your union, the Communication Workers of America, here in New Jersey, we would be far off worse than the challenges we have ahead. And I told you about Hetty because at that luncheon that year when I honored her for her community activism, she gave a speech at that luncheon for women from all backgrounds. And you could hear a pin drop as Hetty sent out a clarion call to the people in that audience that it was incumbent upon each and every one of us to do our part to contribute to social justice. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. I know with Carolyn as your president and your other leadership, I know that you have heard why the fight for justice and equality is so important, and why you have to be a participant in that. Many people think, well, that's for some other people to deal with. It is not for some other people to deal with. It is for each and every one of us to step up and do our part. You know, I don't know about you, but, you know, I stay on top of what's going on. And when I come home at night and flick on my remote and I turn to MSNBC and I listen to the stories of the day and what has been going on under the radar without our knowledge because we're distracted by so much coming out of Capitol Hill, we have to stay focused. And one of your members and leaders, Estina Baker, who I love with all my heart as a sister, she tells everyone, if she sends you an email, if she sends you a text, if she leaves you a voice message, Estina ends it with hashtag stay woke. Hashtag stay woke. My 91-year-old mother has a t-shirt she wears to her senior center, to the exercise class, and in big letters it says, stay woke. So what I am here to deliver to you, if my 91-year-old mother knows that it is time for us to stay woke, then everyone in this Tropicana ballroom tonight needs to leave the convention of the CWA Local 1040 knowing that you have a responsibility to stay woke. You have a responsibility to stay woke. When I think about how the clock is being turned back on workers' rights, people not wanting to pay adequate wages, and if it weren't for CWA and the union movement, we would see harsher working conditions imposed on all of us. We have an uncaring, unapologetic corporate sector in this country these days that cares nothing more than about their bottom line. They don't care about their social and corporate responsibility. So what do we have to do? We have to hold people accountable. And I know CWA knows about that because we have on our computer screens all of those red CWA shirts that converge on the state capitol in Trenton. You teamed up with the NJEA, and there were never ever in my lifetime that many working people who are part of the labor movement locking arms across occupations, across union chapters to force the issue of accountability and telling folks, you ain't playing. You ain't playing. Having been a member of the legislature, and I don't want to call any of the people that I have served with out. I don't want to call not one of them out. But if you don't call them out, you will continue a system of backrooms, of deal making, and folks trading off what is good for your life and your families. They will trade it off with a blink of an eye. And if you're not staying woke, you won't even know what happened. So don't think because we had a president who understood access to health care for all that the fight for health care is over, because it's not. The Affordable Care Act is debated every day in the Republican majority caucus in our U.S. Senate to roll back the progress that was made. You know, I have a t-shirt, I have a hat, I got a bag, and it's a quote from our former president, Barack Obama. And it says, I know you miss me now. I know you miss me now. And I'm not ashamed to wear it or carry my tote bag. Because we don't have an appreciation for our leaders that are out on the front line. Carolyn Wade is on the front line. Hetty Rosenstein on the front line. Kevin Brown on the front line. Fighting for you every day. And sometimes you don't even know it. You don't even know it. We should not be entering the year of 2020 still fighting fights that happened and we thought we fought 50 years ago. As the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, why am I still fighting in municipalities about implementing a court decision that low-income housing be built in every single municipality in this state? Why should we be fighting that fight? Why are we still fighting the fight after Brown versus the Board of Education, Thurgood Marshall's famous case of 1954? Why are we still fighting for equal funding for our school systems? We fought that fight. Why do we have to have a group of social activists in New Jersey? New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, the NAACP, New Jersey Black Issues Convention, filing a lawsuit against the state for continuing to maintain segregated school systems in this state. And if you think there aren't segregated school systems in this state, come take a ride with me and my troopers someday and drive across these counties in New Jersey. And you will see systemic and institutionalized racism at work right here in the state of New Jersey. If we don't call it out and fight it and stand up and be a voice for voiceless people, we'll get rolled over like a steamroller. And that's going to bring me to talk to you about what's before us. Now in New Jersey, we've got elections in November. We have legislative races, and depending upon what town you live in, you may have local races. But what is so important, and I can't emphasize it enough, it is important that whenever you have an opportunity to cast a vote at every level, we owe it to our ancestors to come out and do it. I'm talking the school board, your county elections, your municipal elections, and for those of you that have school-age children, make the sacrifice every now and then and attend a Board of Education meeting. People are making decisions that are going to determine the course and direction of your children's lives. And if you don't stay vigilant and stay on top of it, we will have a situation where increased numbers of our kids will graduate from high school, and they'll graduate from high school without a skill set to go out into this world and either continue their education or enter the labor market. There was a great story in the Star Ledger this Sunday. There's a national organization called Chalkboard.org. They followed a young man from the city of Newark and a young man from Detroit. And both of them were students in urban districts. This young man from Newark did all the right things. He was a leader in the school. Everyone knew him. He did work in the community. And his goal and aspiration was to enter Rutgers in Newark. He went to the summer program through the Educational Opportunity Fund program. And at the end of that program, he still had not garnered the skills he needed. They had to tell him, we can't admit you in September. The young man went home and cried his eyes out that night. But there was an educator at that campus who knew how hard that young man worked, called him and his mother in and said, I'm going to give you an opportunity. That is what our voting hinges on. It hinges on transformative things for our lives. I would always tell my constituents, there's somebody in a room making a decision how much your quart of milk and your loaf of bread cost. So you know what? I decided a long time ago, I'm going to be in the room. I'm going to be in the room. And I guess, Carolyn, what my message tonight to Local 1040 is, we have to be in the room. We have to be in the room, we have to have our voices in the room, and we have to show up. And I often tell my colleagues, we have to show up, and sometimes we have to show out. Sometimes we got to show out. And I'm comfortable doing both. You know, a couple of weeks ago, and Governor Murphy, let me tell you that he sends his regards to all of you. He knew I was coming down tonight, and he told me to give a big shout out to CWA Local 1040. He did. And you know what the governor's agenda is. You know when you gave him your overwhelming support, what he told you he was going to do. There's not one commitment Governor Murphy made to you and other working class people in this state that he has not fulfilled. Not one. On the day Governor Murphy was sworn in, he signed for the first time an equal pay law for women. He also restored funding to women's health centers in this state. Governor Murphy also put forth on his desk, and I was honored when he was out of state to sign a wage theft bill, severely penalizing employers that try to get away with underpaying and not paying people what they're supposed to get. Governor Murphy has made it possible for anyone in New Jersey with an income of $65,000 or less to go to any community college in this state for free. He did that. And yesterday, he gave a one-year report to the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce on his progress with his economic plan. He is extremely serious about the commitments that he made to the people in this state. And people are happy with what Governor Murphy is doing. Do not let the voices and the chatter that you hear from time to time trying to throw hand grenades at our governor. Our governor is our governor, and he stands with us. He stands with us. But sometimes, Reverend, when people are doing the right thing for the right reasons, folks that don't want to see that happen will try to throw every impediment in the way. But there's people from one end of this state to the other who recognize what Governor Murphy is trying to accomplish for us. You know what he did with your contract. You know that he sat down and collectively bargained, and as a result of that and the CWA's commitment, the governor was able to save over $800 million for us to support other things for the residents of this state. And I want to thank you for that as well. So, we've come upon a time where it's tough for organized labor. We see the decision that came out of the California Supreme Court, trying to make more states right-to-work states, where unions cannot organize and demand that they, have the right to collectively bargain. New Jersey is a state that won't become one of those states. It won't become one of those states. New Jersey was built on the backs of working people. Let me assure you of that, and all of the wealth that has been created in this state for institutions and corporations and our large employers. They have had the success they have had because of working people. But the time has come for us to rise up, stay woke, put our voices in the room, and make certain that we acquire what is due us. That time has come. So I'm taking my seat, but I want to close with this. It's going to be extremely important who is the next president of the United States of America. It's going to be very important. And in New Jersey, I'm going to tell you, having run for assembly every 2 years, in many of our towns across the state, less than 25% of registered voters come out and vote. And that's a fact. That's a fact. You can take our 8 largest cities. You know what they are: Newark and Trenton and Camden and, Jersey City. 25% of the people coming out to vote. We can't do that in 2020, folks. And I know that CWA, with their history, we're going to wrap it up and tie it down for whoever the Democratic nominee is in New Jersey, but CWA always has a history of fanning out and going to whatever state needs their help. I've seen buses roll out of Trenton with members of CWA going over to Pennsylvania to door knock with candidates and get people out. Let's make sure that our registered voters in your neighborhood, in your faith institutions, at your workplace, leave no stone unturned, walking and talking the need for us to vote. We didn't do it in 2016, but not in New Jersey, but across this country. We didn't do it. Detroit, they didn't vote. And we lost the state of Michigan. So we got what we got because of what we did across the country. If it is to be, it will be because of me. Remember that each one of us can make some type of contribution to further our progress and to keep not just New Jersey, but this country, the country we know it is working to become, because we're not there yet. Don't think because in Philadelphia, Reverend, that Declaration of Independence is in that glass case. We didn't get there yet. And there are words in that Constitution that says, towards a more perfect union. We haven't gotten there, so it's our job to make sure we get there. Thank you for listening to me.